You know who it is, it's Big P and Julian. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm good, mate. I just thought I'd spend my lunchtime chatting to my good friend, having talking about a bit of boxing.
Good man. Did you see him with his charger?
Oh, I'll tell you, yeah, they're brilliant those, aren't they?
I says, Dad, what you got there? He says, I've got a charger for your tyre, it's going down. I said, yeah, I'll risk it up to the local petrol station. It's only a mile. No, wait there, let me dig it out. It's never
Yeah.
been used, got instructions out and all that now. We're freezing my arse off, mate.
My brother's got one. He's obsessed in his tire pressure in his cars. I don't know why, and he's always got one in boot, mate.
Oh, but anyway, Conor Ben situation. You've seen the talk sport stuff. They're not letting it go, are they, Simon Jordan?
I think it's really good. I know you and I get sometimes you get a bit of stick for this, but I think it's a good thing because we won't let it go, and I don't think we should let it go. I think it's a massive, massive story, and when we will let it go is when justice goes through the right channels and justice is served, and justice might be that it has a real plausible explanation for what's gone on, and things, they might get a small ban or not, but that's when justice will be served, not when he decides is innocent or when the WBC decide there's a very, very small chance that there might be something to do with eggs and let him off. That's not justice, mate. It's not justice for all those clean athletes out there.
Yeah. Do you think we're past the stage, Julian, now where he could come out and just swallow and go guilty? Or has it gone too far now?
That's a really good point. I was thinking about this earlier on. One thing we have to say, and I saw this in one of your comments, and I take this on board actually. Conor Ben's a young lad. Yep. He's had a very privileged upbringing. He owns that. He will openly say, I've had a good upbringing. I've not really known hardship as such outside of the gym and the ring. And he's, in some ways, could have been mentored better and coached better through this. So, while we give him stick, I'll always try and give him a little bit of leeway as well. What we've found now, what's become really, really clear, Russell, and you and I called this so long ago, but it's becoming clearer to a lot more people with bigger platforms than us, is all this wait until you see the science. Eddie Hearn saying, I've seen the science will blow you away. It's blown me away. I can't go into detail, but when you see the science, it's going to just blow you into next
Is it all
week.
bluster, do you think?
It's nonsense. Do you know what? Right. It's looking more and more. The quite interesting thing is when you see Simon Jordan and some of the people who have, openly said, look, Conor Ben is a lovely lad, and I hope for boxing for Conor Ben's sake, this gets cleared up with a plausible explanation. What I've started noticing now when people are saying to them, black and white, do you think he's guilty or not? The response now is the kind of like, well, and there's a real leaning towards, we know what the fighters and the coaches and people in boxing think, and the fans and the communities think, because they all think he's guilty. But there's a real leaning now with all those people who have given him the benefit of the doubt for so long. They're just thinking, do you know what? We've waited patiently. We've given you the benefit of the
Into
doubt.
8 months now, aren't we, since the
And
first one?
and what have they actually come out with? So effectively, they've created a 270-page document that was going to blow us away with science, that the WBC, who have actually bent over backwards for Conor Ben, have turned around and said, no, that's not good enough. We actually don't think there was any contamination, any lack of due process, or anything wrong with the procedures by VADA in the collection and the administration and any side of that things. We think there was no fault there. And then the WBC, what they've actually done is just said, give us a few weeks, we'll look at your diet. So the WBC, who actually should be the judge in this situation, have actually turned to become the defence, and they've said, well, actually, Conor, yeah, I think you might have had too many eggs, because that wasn't Conor Ben's defence, according to Conor Ben and the statement he released yesterday. He's saying, that wasn't my defence. The WBC are saying it's egg consumption. So the people who should be effectively ruling on this situation based on evidence have ignored anything. They've basically just said, let's have a look at your diet. Come on, we can think of something. And they've come up with this because we all know what's coming, a big fight in Saudi for a WBC title of some sorts where everybody's going to cash in. But to answer the initial question about Ben and could this have been dealt with better, which is why I'm talking about he's not really been mentored in any way or been advised. You know what Conor Ben should have turned around and said, Russell, and I think we all know this, he should have said, look, really upset what's happened, the cancellation of the fight, and I feel so bad for everybody involved. You know, the audience, the pundits, the customers, the fighters on the undercard. I really don't know how this has got in my system, but I have to accept that I'm an athlete and I monitor everything. So I'm going to look at this, and if you please just bear with me and forgive me and give me some time, I'm going to try and come up with an explanation. I truly believe I'm a clean athlete, but I also understand what's happened. You know, inadvertently, I've let people down. And if he'd shown some contrition and some humility, we would have given him maybe more of the benefit of doubt than we have done. But because he's been so arrogant and obnoxious, and so has Hearn and everybody else involved in this, by basically saying, no wrongdoing, absolutely not. People have lost favour with him, and you've just said we're into the 7th, the 8th month, and we have all now, whatever reasons he had, and I'll be honest, I thought quite early on he was guilty, if I'm being totally honest, but there were a lot of people who didn't. And he's almost become public enemy number one. The court of public opinion have condemned him. And ultimately, Russell, I know I'm going on about this one, but all the build-up and all the defence and all these lawyers and hundreds of thousands of pounds to clear his name, and his 270-page defence was dismissed by the WBC. It wasn't submitted to UCAD. It wasn't submitted to the Boxing Board of Control. And it's actually the WBC who was given a real convenient excuse and said, oh, potentially there might be a egg contamination. And it's actually quite pathetic, isn't it? It's quite weak. And all we've heard for months and months and months is, I can't say anything because of my legal team, but wait until you see what we have. And that is it. That is the sum total of their defence. Actually, the WBC saying, you might have had a few too many eggs, Conor. It's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? It's not good at all. What do you think to that Adi Alapido and Tony Bellew coming out regarding Conor Ben, saying he believes he's innocent? Adi Alapido and what other one? Bellew saying, look at the science, like you've said, but they're going to do, aren't they?
Well, let's look at the science, and let's look.
I've just sent you that on your phone. Have a look at that.
I mean, this is the thing we've got, Russell. Okay, so when
they're putting smoke screens up for Eddie Hills, aren't they? The 6-0 Iceman.
This is what it's all about. Yeah, they're just behaving like belligerent children, aren't they? They've got no defence, Russell. They've got absolutely no defence. If you look at Canelo Alvarez, whatever you say about Canelo Alvarez, and I was a critic of him back at the time when he failed his test. Since then, the one key thing that Canelo Alvarez did, as well as sign up to the 365-day program for 12 months, which meant you can come and test me every single day and do whatever you like, Canelo Alvarez provided a hair follicle. Now, we all know that the hair follicles are the key piece of scientific information that will show long or no-term use for PEDs. That's all Conor Ben needs to do. If he just provides a hair follicle, the scientists will look at that and they will black and white say there's no long-term use there. And if there's no long-term use of anything that's effectively banned, that puts him in a good position. He's done nothing to clear his name. He's not provided any audit trail. He's not provided any receipts, which athletes are supposed to do. All athletes, as you know, are supposed to document their diet and keep receipts of all their food intake. It goes with being a professional elite or so-called elite athlete who gets paid a lot of money for fighting. He's not doing anything to clear his name whatsoever. And that's why nobody's convinced, because it's smoke screens from Bellew and all the people who love him and all the people who are being diplomatic, and I've not even seen anything on Eddie Hearn for weeks about this. I'm sure there's stuff out there. I just can't watch it anymore because it's just, you're trying to insult people, and I won't listen to you right now at the moment. But he's done nothing. Provide a hair follicle, okay? Go in front of the British Boxing Board of Control, present the same evidence that you presented to the WBC, which was thrown out by the WBC, and no doubt will be thrown out by the British Boxing Board of Control. Allow UKAD, again, to report on this scientific evidence and to report on everything that's been given, and stop putting smoke screens out there. And we all know as well, and I've made this point before, the WBC ruling, and Adam Catterall has said exactly the same thing as we've been saying for a while now. The WBC ruling was only in relation to the first test, not the second test. And because that test was part of the clean boxing program, not effectively in relation to UKAD and British Boxing Board of Control, they haven't applied strict liability. And we all know now by now that strict liability means if it's in your system, you're bound to rights, irrespective of whatever reason you've got for it being in your system. So whereas I previously thought the British Boxing Board of Control would be in a difficult position if they do investigate this, I'm now under no doubt that the British Boxing Board of Control, if they do look at this and they get the documentation, they will ban him.
Yeah. So basically, after all this, you see, we're talking July, aren't we? So August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Right, we're into March now since the first test, aren't we? 8 months. We're into the 8th month. So Conor Ben's innocent all that time for 3 months or 2.5 months. They all kept it quiet, didn't they? Or 9 weeks or something. Just over 9 weeks, they kept it quiet. So for all that time, he was pleading innocent to Eddie Hearn, rolling around on the floor crying. Eddie Hearn's words on IFL, weren't they? So after all that, he has not put one shred of evidence forward to say, well, this is how I'm not guilty. We haven't seen anything. We don't even know if it's a 270-page dossier, do we?
Nothing. Like I said, the 270-page dossier was thrown out. The WBC even didn't buy into that one. We haven't seen a dot, Russell, and that is it ultimately, isn't it? The science is going to blow us away, and we have to give Conor Ben the time to prepare his defence and submit his evidence. Well, we've had 8 months. He's not submitted it to the very people he should be submitting it to. And you know what? I think, truthfully, we always use words like alleged and potentially, and, you know, if we're wrong, we're wrong. But ultimately, I think now there are too many flags. I'll keep bringing up the same things over and over again. There are too many flags. And I want to know where Sajid Usman is. That guy has conveniently disappeared off the face of the earth. I want to know where he is, and I think someone should be starting to look to him and to interview him, because he's had 7 or 8 months now to come up with his story that actually I wasn't Conor Ben's camp doctor, and what I meant by it's easy to get past the drugs test, etc., etc. We want to know where this hormone replacement, testosterone replacement expert, Dr. Sajid Usman, is. Where is he, Russell?
Well, we don't know, do we? It's like it's a whodunit, isn't it? He's like Lord Lucan, isn't he? And Ronnie Biggs.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one who's come up with this. I think several of us have said this, but a good friend of mine who's a coach sent me an audio last night, actually. He said, have you seen the latest video of Conor Ben on the bag, hitting the bag? And I says, no, I can't watch it. And he says, you need to watch it, Jules. He goes, just watch it. I won't lead you. Tell me what you think. And as I watched it, I'm seeing someone, you know, you learn not just to use your eyes when you coach, you know, I don't mean that to be patronising, but most importantly, you learn to use your ears. And I've said this before, Russell, sometimes I can tell when a fighter's ready just by listening to him skip or on the bag or whatever, as opposed to actually watching him. And I watched the clips of Conor Ben on the bag last night, and obviously visually is a very slimmed down version of the guy that we saw 2 to 3 weeks out from the Eubank Junior fight, who was looking really solid and really strong. is quite slimmed down. There's a noticeable drop in muscle mass. There's a noticeable drop in bulk. That might be because of certain things with his S&C he's not doing right now because he doesn't have a fight. There was a definite difference in the sound on the bag. I saw a bit of pads with him because I started looking. Let's have a look at this and see if it's just my paranoia. This doesn't look like a world-class explosive puncher that we've been used to seeing in the past 12 to 18 months. And there is a real difference in Conor Benn's physicality, but more so his lack of crack and snap at the moment as he's on the bag and on the pads. I'm not seeing that explosiveness that I saw, and there were just too many red flags for me.
Yeah, it's a bad situation, but do you know the people surrounding him? Right, he's managed by Charlie Sims, isn't he? Right, they must be thinking, well, if we get this 3.5 million that he's so on board with, which how he's gonna do that, I don't know. He's got a massive job on his hands there, hasn't he? And I've spoken to two legal people regarding that. Massive, but who's advising him? Are they thinking, well, forget this 3.5 million, we still get our cut?
Well,
but Connor's going to foot the legal bill, obviously.
Well, what I will say is this, right? And I always try and not to come across as a smart ass. I'm just a normal guy. I'm a son of a miner and a market trader. Yeah, working class upbringing. You know that. Now, obviously, I work in the business of working. I work in publishing. So I work with editors and you look at edits and copies. Now, I saw the long statement from Conor Benn. And I'm assuming, and I think it's a fair assumption, that Conor Benn didn't come up with that statement. That was done by his PR team and his legal team. As I read that statement, these people are not that good. If I'd paid these guys to represent me, wouldn't be happy about those kind of statements going out. The whole PR thing and the whole statements and everything else has been really poor, really badly worded, badly crafted, not very easy to read, and it's just full of inaccuracies all the way through. Is a statement that he did. I just think it's really, really poor. I don't know who these people are, like you said, his manager and his legal team, who are advising him and looking out for him. Now, I've done a couple of videos, and I've said, the theme's generally been don't feel sorry for Conor Benn. And I'm not going to feel sorry for Conor Benn, but I'm starting to, in such a small way, feel that he doesn't have the best people around him and doesn't have the best team around him. And if he truly is innocent, then he deserves a better defense and better representation than he's getting. Who's advising him? Like I've said before, the first thing I do is take his phone off him. So some of these tweets he's put out and these Instagram posts are pretty horrible, actually. But the legal, the legal statements and that last statement that I put out this week, Adam Catterall has absolutely butchered it. But just in terms of the language of it and the way it's structured is awful. He's got some pretty poor people, I think, looking out for him. So, Conor, whoever's representing you and whatever you're paying them too much, mate, because I could have put a better statement together than that. In an afternoon, I could have drafted one that was so much better than that. It's actually awful. So what they're actually doing now, Russell, is if you read between the lines, is they're actually attacking the WBC. The one group or organisation that's almost defending Conor Benn and getting a lot of stick for that, the WBC. Conor Benn's first of all turned around and said, I'm really disappointed in the WBC's how they've responded to this and the first part of it. So he said that about a week and a half ago. And then the second thing he said this week with that 1,000-word statement is, well, they've come up with the egg theory, not me. I didn't focus it on eggs. That's not even my defence. So if you were Sullivan now, he's an embarrassing guy, is Jose Sullivan, but if you were WBC and Jose Sullivan, I'd be retracting that statement and that stance. I'd be saying, okay, all right, you've been quite critical of us right now. So you see where I'm going with this one, Russell. He's been badly advised, and I don't mean this to be rude. He's not the brightest kid. He's not. He doesn't need to be, does he? I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but Conor Benn is definitely not the brightest kid in the world. So I'm not going to change my tune. I'm going to be consistent. I'm not going to really feel sorry for him too much. But there's an element where I'm thinking, you know what? Whoever's advising you, whether it's your management, your promoters, the legal team, your friends, your dad, they're doing an awful job of this, because what you do during any scandal is you do damage limitation. And they haven't done any damage limitation whatever. They've given people a wall of silence. What they have come out with has been quite hostile and quite arrogant. And they've just done an awful job. They really have done an awful job of this.
Do you think he'll fight in Saudi then, Julian?
Yeah, of course he will. There'll be. Look, we saw it the weekend with Tommy Fury and Jake Paul. I know there's obviously different circumstances there because of the profile of those guys. But there's a lot of money in Saudi. There's a real thirst for putting on these massive events for the princes. And there's a load of money to play with in Saudi. And I think the WBC, because we know they've been kind of defending the undefendable, they'll have some belt on the line. I don't know what. They'll sanction this fight somehow, so they get a big percentage. Conor Benn will fight someone, probably a big name. I don't know who, some faded force. Hope to God it's not Manny Pacquiao. And people will watch it, or they won't. But it's scripted. And, you know, I've been critical of border control, as you know, for so many things. But you never thought you'd hear these words from me, Russell, but I defend the border control on this one. I genuinely would defend them on this one, because I think, if anything, the one criticism of the border control, the sort of final point, is people said, why have the border control sat on this information for so long before acting? And Robert Smith alluded to the fact that as soon as the first drug tests come out and the border control were notified, they had a legal cease and desist placed upon them straight away, which effectively gagged them. It gagged them. So I think the Board of Control were in a difficult position. And again, I'm defending them on this one. They're not blameless, but if you're an organisation or a boxing authority and you don't have the greatest funds, as you know, they're not, the turnover, they spend what the turnover on expenses. If you're the Boxing Board of Control, you're in a tough situation, and you just say, okay, we've had this legal letter, they review it with the QCs on the committee, and they might turn around and says, well, there's not a lot we can do right now. So that is something that's come out that Simon Jordan prized out of Smith, was as soon as the first drug test was known, they had a cease and desist dropped on them, and they were effectively gagged. So what could the Board of Control do?
They couldn't really do anything, could they, really? Ern and Ben have gagged them, haven't they? So they couldn't even speak to anybody about it. So they couldn't act straight away, could they?
Nothing they can do. So, whatever I've said about Robert Smith and the board over the years, I stand by, certainly in terms of Gary Sykes and some of the poor matchmaking, officiating and everything else. But in terms of how they've handled this, I don't think they could have done much more than they've done. And I do have a slight difference of opinion in terms of if the Board of Control do review this, I think they'll ban him. I think they're going to give him a 2-year ban. Whether that's with him in presence or not, whether he's a licensed holder or not, they said they're looking into this. But I don't think Conor Benn will be applying for a British license anytime soon.
Yeah. All right then. Moving on from Conor Benn then, and the adventures of Tintin. All the liquors were there in Saudi, weren't they?
Yeah, they all
don't say enough nice things about Saudi. Do you think John Fury went into overdrive saying how nice Saudi is?
He was having such a great time, wasn't he? And I think, look, if you're John Fury, so we talked about John Fury before, and John Fury's often said about Tyson and sometimes Tommy, but he said, my sons give me nothing. I've seen the interviews where he said his sons give him nothing. But at the moment, Big John is the official trainer of Tommy Fury. So he's going to cop for 10% of whatever Tommy gets.
50%.
Now, well, he's going to get a big chunk, isn't it? I know Jimmy Harrington is a good guy. Jimmy's his manager. But John Fury is going to cop for a percentage of whatever Tommy gets.
It up. He deserves his slice of cake, doesn't he?
John's been as good as Jake Paul, hasn't he, in terms of promoting the event? And
he's been Tommy's mouthpiece. You've got to give him credit, haven't you? A
bit like the Board of Control. Like you and I, people say you're just down on certain things and certain people. we give credit where credit's due. John, and I've watched some of this stuff. I won't deny it. I've watched it. I said I wouldn't do.
They've invented that many storylines. They've gone round in circles.
John's been brilliant. John's been probably the most entertaining thing of this, and it was
Call him
hilarious.
John Fury in our house now. Do you know what we call him? Vince McMahon Mark II.
Well, he has been doing a Vince McMahon, hasn't he? And he's been absolutely watchable and entertaining, and he's been brilliant. And look, the fight was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Do you know what? The couple of things that have come out of this since we're talking about the Fury Paul fight. You know my views on it. I thought Tommy would beat him easy. I thought Jake Paul was horrendous. I share my views. I share with Carl Froch on this one. He said exactly what I said before and after this fight. Right. So anybody who thinks that fight was close, give your head a shake. It was a completely one-sided fight. There was a knockdown in the last round. Sometimes when your balance isn't great, you're in a certain position, a punch puts you over, it's classed as a knockdown. There are different types of knockdown. As we know, there were 4 or 5 different types of knockdown. It was one of those things. He touched down, he wasn't hurt. He dominated the rest of the round, and I thought Tommy Fury won the fight easy. Tommy Fury wasn't great. Tommy Fury needs to learn how to defend a left jab and a left hook, because his right side is completely open. The way he positions his right hand is so bad. He needs to work on that. But Jake Paul can't fight, mate. He can't box. He can't fight. He's got no spatial awareness, no judgment of distance. All this rubbish about Jake Paul is like Ernie Shavers and don't tell well.
Bricktop coming out saying he's a boxer and he showed us he's a boxer.
Listen,
begging bowl out there for Bricktop liquor.
You saw my breakdown. I haven't changed my position on Jake Paul 1 dot or Tommy Fury 1 dot. And if I were Tommy Fury, who I will say this, Tommy Fury's come across as just such a nice kid. We've said this consistently, haven't we? You can see he's a nice kid. He's a nice lad, and I think he's quite shy, actually. In spite of the massive social media following and the spotlight, I think Tommy Fury's a shy lad. And he has lived in the massive shadow of Tyson and lately John because of his massive personality. But Tommy Fury, if I were you, genuinely, and I never thought I'd say this, keep going down the route you're going down. Go down the route of fighting YouTubers, fight KSI, fight Jake Paul again, fight all these guys and earn as much money as you can from boxing and live a very happy, healthy life, because you are so far short of even domestic level, the top operators at domestic level. It's not there, Russell. It's just not there, mate.
Yeah, he got beat at area level, won he, by Reeves, won it at cruiserweight, Tommy won it.
I mean, obviously there is he's a novice, but he's been pro 4.5 years. There's not been a lot of activity there. He's a complete novice. You can see that. He's quite strong. There's so many things he doesn't do well. And as I've said, he doesn't defend on his right side at all. That's like a real worry. But he's got a nice long left jab. He's got some decent feet. He's got a bit of heart. You know, he hung in there and he gutted it out. And like I say, he won easy win, easy. And the punch stats show that as well. He won pretty much every round. And if I win, just do what you're doing, mate. Do what you're doing and make your money doing the white collar, doing the celebrity boxing, whatever you call it. I don't know what it is. But he's a nice kid. He's a hard-working kid, and I actually quite like Tommy Fury. I do.
Do you think he'll fight KSI next, or do you think they'll exercise the rematch for Jake Paul?
I think he'll do both. I think he'll fight Jake Paul next, and then he'll fight KSI. But if I were Jake Paul, and even Jake Paul's trainer said this afterwards, forget the guy's name, BJ Flores, and he said, well, can't guarantee we'd even win the rematch. I don't know. You can't say. And it's what I've said. You can't learn this stuff in 3 years. I don't care who you are. I don't care who's training you. Boxing is a very, very skilled sport that takes such a long time to learn the basic fundamentals. And ring craft and ring IQ takes so long to master those things. And it's just, Jake Paul was just absolutely awful. I thought it was horrendous. really, in fact, is worse than I thought it was, and I thought it was pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for people to turn around now and start saying he proved he was a professional, he proved he's a good fighter, you just got to stop licking. You just got to stop licking because it's nonsense. And final one, and this is not aimed at you, Russell, or anybody else. This is aimed at that these people who consider themselves, because you and I talk about boxing. I don't think we consider ourselves boxing experts. We've been around the game. We enjoy boxing and we have a view. But the people who say they are boxing experts, the Teddy Atlases and the former world champions, are not anybody who thought Jake Paul was going to win that fight. I actually don't know what to say to these people.
Well, I thought you were going to win it because I thought they were going to rip Tommy off.
You thought there was a fix, though, didn't they? You thought there was going to be a script in there, and I just couldn't see it. I can't see a Fury adhering to any kind of script.
What they were, Big John there, big fighting man. Rah.
I just can't see it. I thought it would be a legitimate fight. It was a fun fight. It was all right. You know, it was what it was. You know, if you saw that fight at the York Hall, second or third up the bill 20, 30 years ago, you'd have just said, oh, them two novices weren't bad. They had a go, didn't they? And that is literally what you would have said. But there was something, and this is where maybe I'm a slight hypocrite. I've said to you, I'll always own it, Russell, if I change my mind on something. There was something for me that I enjoyed the whole week. I enjoyed the build-up. I thought it was quite fun. My kids wanted to watch it, which says it all, doesn't it, about cross-generational boxing. My kids wanted to watch it. My partner wanted to watch it. My lads, and they're like, oh, let's watch the fight, Dad. Let's watch the fight. And it was the first time we've sat down around the TV as a family for years, mate. You know what kids are like now. They're in the bedrooms to do their own thing. So I just thought, you know what? And I'll own it. I might have condemned it, but I enjoyed the build-up. I enjoyed the whole week. And we got exactly what I thought we were going to get.
Yeah, yeah. What about all the big fights going out there now? Is that going to freeze out the British fans?
The problem I have with that is there was a bit of an atmosphere, but there wasn't much of one, was there? They were very. Oh. It's like when Mike Tyson got beat by Buster Douglas. Was that in Tokyo? Now,
yeah, Tokyo.
So we know that particular crowd are very. When you watch, you know, like in Tokyo or China or wherever, when you watch big martial arts events, they're very polite, very quiet crowd, and the Saudis are just the same, aren't they? Whereas the English, we're a rowdy bunch, aren't we? You can see some really great scraps. And I was thinking when Nigel Benn knocked out Gerald McClellan, and just that crowd was unbelievable. Bruno was there, Naz was there. People were going crackers when Froch beat was it Bute? Yeah. The atmosphere came through, it radiated through the television, didn't it? But in Saudi, there's just something really, really drab about watching a fight in Saudi, like the AJ fights and stuff. It's just boring. I enjoyed the build-up and everything because of the characters, but I don't want to see the big fights in Saudi just because from a viewer's point of view, it's a really flat spectacle.
Yeah, isn't it? It's a bit like Americans, isn't it? They sit there with an hot dog, don't they? And
they just sit there, right, really quiet, don't they?
And a giant 7-Up.
It's just bizarre, isn't it? You can't get that enthusiasm. You know, different cultures and different continents respond very, very differently to sporting events, don't they? It's like when when the World Cup, not the last time, maybe the time before last or the time before that, was in South Africa, and it was just awful. It was just like deathly. So that would be my only criticism of Saudi Arabia. It's a really gorgeous place to go visit. Yeah. But as I've said, like when Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas in one of the greatest upsets in boxing history, it was kind of a subdued event. And that would have been such a better spectacle had it been in Madison Square Garden or wherever. So it's one of them, isn't it? It's like, it's where the money is, Russell. People are going to go where the money is, mate. And that's the theme of it all now, isn't it? It's always been a business, but now it is purely a business and nothing else.
Yeah, it is. It is. Right. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Julian.
My pleasure.
Pleasure. Hope you're well.
Hope your tires get sorted, mate.
Yeah, I'll sort it. All right, my friend, you take care.
Right, back to work now, mate. You take care, Russell.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Yeah, buddy.
Right. Well, that was Julian. Out of a lion. Not like you, Max. Out of a breadcrumb. Peace out. Porky's Corner is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Site Solutions. They are specialists in civil engineering and demolition contracts for the construction industry. Interested parties should visit their website or contact Porky's Corner for a referral at porkycorner@mail.com.